Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to do a video on surface area and we're going to tie it into algebra, okay? Right now in grade 8 math, we're studying algebra. We've already covered surface area, and so I thought that I would try to tie the two together into a problem solving aspect, okay? So here is what we have. We have the length of our rectangular prism being 8 meters. We have the width of our rectangular prism being 5 meters, and we're looking for the height, okay? Next, we know that the actual surface area of the prism itself is 184 square meters, okay? Now, you could find the height by trial and error, but let's be a little bit more sophisticated so that we're actually building some skills along the way. Let's use algebra to figure this one out, okay? So the first step is going to be to write an equation that relates the surface area to the expression that we could create for the surface area of the prism, given its dimensions, okay? So if we look at the prism in 3D, we have 3 pairs of congruent faces, right? We have the 2 rectangles on the 2 sides, with the 2 rectangles in the front and the back, and similarly with the 2 rectangles on the front, on the top and on the bottom, okay? So we have 3 pairs of 2 congruent faces, okay? So if we're to write that out, we could write 2 times, let's start off with the bottom and the top surfaces. So we could write 2 times, the area of each one would be 8 by 5, right? So 2 bracket 8 times 5, okay? Next up, let's simply, arbitrarily choosing, let's look at the sides next. So for each side face, we have dimensions of 5 and h. We don't know h, so we'll just leave that as a variable, h, since that's what we're actually looking for in this problem. So with the dimensions, and so the area will be 5 times h, and we have 2 identical rectangles like that, so we can have 2 bracket 5 times h. And lastly, we can now take the front surface and the back surface, the 2 congruent rectangles in the front and the back. Both of those would have dimensions 8 and h, and so the area of each would be 8 times h, and so 2 bracket 8 times h, okay? And this is an expression for the surface area of our rectangular prism, right? That's an expression for the surface area. And we actually know what the surface area turns out to be. It's equal to 194 square meters. And so we actually get an equation out of this, okay? All this has to be equal to the actual surface area that we're given of 184. And this is where the algebra comes in, because we're solving an equation. We only have one variable. We see it twice at this step. We see it here and we see it here, but they're both the same variable, they're just h, and so we do have the algebra to solve this equation, okay? Now, before we solve, and this is a great rule of thumb, anytime you're solving equations using algebra, let's simplify everything that we can simplify before we start solving, okay? We don't want to solve at this point, it's far too messy. Let's simplify down as much as we can, okay? So, let's start off with the first term. We have 8 times 5, that's 40. And then 40 times 2, that's going to give us 80 plus. Next we have 5 times h. We can write 5 times h as simply 5h. And then 2 times 5h, that's going to give us 10h, right? 2 times 5 is 10, and then the h tags along. 10h is implied to mean 10 times h, okay? And then likewise for our third term, 8 times h, we can write as 8h, and 2 of those provides us with 16 because of 2 times 8, h. And now we have our equation equals to 184, okay? Now look at how we've already simplified this down quite a bit, and this looks far more manageable than maybe we had envisioned at the start. Now, before we solve our equation, we can combine like terms. Combining like terms simply means combining terms that are the same in its nature, i.e. these are both terms with h. Just h, not h squared, not h cubed, not just a constant term, but simply a term with just h in it. And so we can actually combine these, okay? And so that means we'll have 80 plus 10h plus another 16h combined together gives us 26h. we know that our surface area is equal to 184. And now we have an equation that you're most likely much more comfortable with, that you've probably seen before, and that you ideally have an idea to solve. Let's use grade 8 algebra to solve this equation. And so I'll write it again up here so we can clearly see the last few steps. So we're looking for h, and so we always want to isolate the term with our variable. I'll even write that down. We want to isolate the term with our variable h. So let's get rid of this plus 80. We're doing inverse operations always with algebra. So the inverse of adding 80 is subtracting 80. And we always do the same thing on both sides. So the 80s cancel each other out. And we have that 26h is equal to 184 minus 80 is 104. And now again, we've talked about how 10 times h was 10h, how 16h is 16 times h, right? So 26h means 26 times h, as always. And so if we want h by itself, we want to get rid of this times 26 out front. And whenever we want to cancel out anything using algebra, we're always thinking inverse operations. And so the inverse of multiplying h by 26 is dividing by 26. And so we'll divide by 26, always do the same thing on both sides of equal sign. And the 26's cancel out. And so we get that h is equal to 104 divided by 26, because a fraction is always a division. So 104 divided by 26, giving us a solution. H is equal to 4. And there we have it. Okay? So our height is 4 meters. We can check this just to make sure. So if we get our new variable having the value of 4 into our expression for surface area, now we'll have 2 times 8 times 5 plus 2 times, again, I'm just rewriting this expression for surface area now with our value of 4 in for h. So 2 times 5 times 8 would mean 2 times 5 times 4, right? Just verifying that our solution actually works. So 2 times 5 times 4, right? That 4 is the value of h we found, h, right? And finally, 2 times 8 times h, so 2 times 8 times 4, plus 2 times 8 times 4. Again, h is also this value of 4 that we're substituting in to verify our solution. And let's see if this actually does turn out to work. So 8 times 5 is 40, times 2 is 80, plus 5 times 4 is 20, times 2, it gives us another 40. And finally, 8 times 4, that's 32, times 2 gives us 64. And adding them all up, our surface area is equal to 80 plus 40 plus 64 for a surface area of 184 meters squared. And so, check, we know our solution is correct. So, there we go. I hope this was clear. I hope this was understandable. I hope this tied in the algebra that we've been studying lately into a section that can definitely be tricky and easy to lose comfortability in earlier on in the year. I hope this kind of helped tie in the two sections together and just give you one more example of why algebra is so useful in our problem solving lives. Okay, I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any suggestions for future videos, please do let me know, and thank you for watching.